Good morning. We're in Matthew chapter 10, and we are looking at the sending out of the 12. So we talked a little bit about this yesterday, like the preparation, this giving of exousia in verse 1. It's translated power in the New King James, but authority is a really good word for it. I mean, it's a power that comes because of authority. And we talked about it's different from dunamis, the power that is given with the Holy Spirit in Acts. So these 12, Jesus, verse 5, sent out and commanded them, saying, do not go into the way of the Gentiles, and do not enter a city of the Samaritans, but rather to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. Oh, joy. Anyway, I'm rolling my eyes because right off the bat, I'm catching a false teaching that again, it's just frustrating to see people teaching funky things, right? So there is a popular teaching out right now that it's basically Hebrew roots. Let's just get cut to the chase. And in the Hebrew roots movement, I've seen people say they make this argument that the lost sheep of Israel were them, not me. That these are Israelites from the 10 tribes who are scattered amongst the Gentiles. And then they use that to kind of reinterpret the word Gentile through a bunch of the New Testament. It's kind of weird. But as you start going through, I mean, they I don't know. I don't want to take you down this long rabbit trail, but I did a review of a video, spent hours and hours working on it, and never really released it publicly. But there's definitely, I shared it with people who are concerned and worried about just some of the false teachings of that movement. But that said, notice what Jesus says, because their teaching is that oftentimes, because they can't say always, because they know sometimes Gentile means Gentile. So I don't know when you know which is which, but according to them, oftentimes, many a time in the New Testament, when it says Gentile, what that means, according to them, is Jewish people, Israelites from the lost 10 tribes who are scattered amongst the nations. So instead of Gentile meaning Gentile, Gentile actually means Jew. But that said, one of their arguments they use is because they equate the lost sheep of Israel being those 10 tribes. Well, notice here Jesus says, don't go into the way of the Gentiles and don't even enter into Samaria, but rather go to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. So here's a pretty stark contrast between Israel and the Gentiles. The lost sheep of Israel. Anyway, it kind of falls apart because we do see throughout the New Testament references to all the tribes. We see Anna, the prophetess, in Luke chapter 2, she is from the tribe of Asher. You actually see in the Old Testament, in First Chronicles and whatnot, in the beginning, and in those boring genealogies no one wants to read, it talks about how after they come back from the captivity, it talks about Ephraim and it talks about Manasseh and other tribes as they came back and settled. So it's important to know that, yes, when they went to Babylon and when Assyria carried away the northern tribes, that those tribes were all scattered. They were, but many returned and many didn't. And many of Judah never returned. Many of Judah stayed in Babylon. And so anyway, I see this and it just always jumps out at me because it's just a subject that I've spent some time studying. And so right? Contrasting now, though, what is the mission now of the 12 as they're being sent out? It is to reach the lost sheep of Israel. Note that their primary mission was not to reach Gentiles and not even Samaritans. Why? Well, because they would be reached later on. The Samaritans in Acts chapter 8, the Gentiles in Acts chapter 10. But because the Jewish people, the Israelites, they were the ones whom God was using. They were the lamp that gave the light unto the world through the Jewish nation. Now, when the Messiah came, the kind of fulcrum of all that they believed, when he shows up on scene here in the Gospels, well, it's important that those people who've been waiting for generations for the Messiah get the news. This is why we see even Paul saying, the gospel being to the Jew first and then to the Gentile. It has nothing to do with superiority, or it's just simply that they deserve to know. They've been waiting for the Messiah. They've been telling the world about the Messiah who is to come. Well, when he comes, they deserve to know. And so most of Jesus' ministry, almost all, is focused on ministering to the Jews. And then obviously we see when it opens up to the Gentiles, the church then becomes a predominantly Gentile structure thing. I mean, the church. I don't know what category to put that into, but the church becomes predominantly Gentile within the first century. And so as our Bible was written, it was predominantly Jewish, but then very quickly becomes predominantly Gentile. And you see a lot of changes in the church. So that's also important stuff to understand, is just the way things shifted when the majority of the members of the church were of a Jewish background to when a majority of the church were a Gentile background. And some of those corrections that had to be made, like in Acts 15 at the Council of Jerusalem, where Peter talks about us, Jewish people, being saved as they, the Gentiles. And that was like mind-blowing, because all the Jews were thinking, it was their natural thought that the Gentiles need to start being more Jewish. And they had this council, and you see Paul writing to the Galatians saying, well, no, actually, you Jews need to realize that you're going to get saved like the Gentiles are getting saved. This doesn't mean they need to quit all of their Jewish traditions and their practices and culture, but they need to understand that that's what they need to do, is they need to be like the Gentiles and not the other way around, where all the Gentiles need to become Jewish. And so he tells them in verse 7, as you go, preach, saying the kingdom of heaven is at hand. Heal the sick, cleanse the lepers, raise the dead, cast out demons. Freely you have received, freely give. And what have they received? Well, they received that exousia back in verse 1, that authority and power to cast out demons and do all this. So Jesus said, hey, I am right now freely giving you these gifts. Now freely give those gifts, or use those gifts to bless others. He says, provide neither gold nor silver nor copper in your money belts. That word provide might be better translated procure, i.e., don't go seek extra. Don't try and find more gold than you have. Like he's telling them they don't need to prepare for this mission. They just need to go out and do it. Nor beg for your journey, nor 2 tunics, nor sandals, nor staves, for a worker is worthy of his food. Worth noting that 2 tunics, sandals, staves. I know sandals, we always put shoes in plural, but the idea here with this numbering and the grammar and the way it plays out is 2 tunics, 2 sets of sandals, 2 staves, because staves is in the plural also. They don't need extra stuff. What they have is sufficient. Now, whatever city or town you inquire, who is city or tower you enter, inquire in it who is worthy, stay there until you go out, and when you go into a household, greet it. If the household is worthy, let your peace come upon it. But if they are not worthy, let your peace return to you. And whoever will not receive you nor hear your words, when you depart from that house or city, shake the dust off your feet. Surely I say to you, it will be more tolerable for the land of Sodom and Gomorrah in the day of judgment than for that city. All right. Now, someone needs to invite Enrique and get him watching if he's not watching. There's a little button. You guys, it's like down in this area. I think you guys can click it, and then you can invite your friends to watch with you. If you're friends with Enrique, you should invite Enrique right now. If you don't have a friend named Enrique, you should just invite someone else. But here's the deal. He's sending the 12 out. Now, I could talk a lot more about the specifics of the 12 and what they went and did. Hey, Enrique's watching now. But the catch is this, is that notice what he tells them. They're going to go out and freely give because they've freely received. If you freely receive God's gift of grace, then it's a shame if you're not freely giving it. If you freely receive God's grace, you're born again, it's a shame and a tragedy if you're not freely giving it. Oh, but nothing. You don't need to be worried about getting more money in your life. You have enough. Don't worry about procuring some gold or silver or copper. A lot of people work too much. Now, I know there's some of you who are just scraping to get by. I get that. But many of us work enough to provide for a family and put food on the table, and we don't need extra gold, copper, silver when there's people who are dying eternally because they're not hearing the gospel. Don't worry about 2 tunics, nor 2 sets of sandals, nor 2 staves. You guys have what you need. A lot of people don't share the gospel, and their excuse is like, I don't know what to say. I don't know. If you're born again, you know what to say. If you know how you got to where you're at, then that's all you need to know, right? You don't need a whole lot more. And he goes out and he talks about people being worthy and unworthy. And the idea is would they receive them? Would they receive them or reject them? And it's beautiful because if people receive you, your peace, the peace that you have because of Jesus, gets to go to them and they get to receive some of your peace. But if they reject you, what does he say? Cry, moan, and quit. Oh, wait, no, it just says shake the dust off your sandals and move on. Expect to be rejected, not because they reject you, but because they love the darkness more than the light, right? That's the simple truth of it all. Men love the darkness rather than the light because the light would expose the evil of their ways. And so, really, there's none of you who have any good excuse to not be sharing the gospel. Here are some of the best excuses. People are scared. It's not a good excuse. It's just the most often and common one. But pretty sure the Bible talks a lot about fear and a lot about God helping people and commands saying we're not supposed to have the fear. They don't feel prepared. Well, twofold. One, you don't need any extra preparation. If you've been saved, you can help others get saved. But if you want extra preparation, there's ways to do that. Put your money where your mouth is and go learn. And thirdly, well, there really is no third. Most of us are just lazy. And I was the third. I knew I had a third up there. We just are not in the habit of sharing our faith. Like many of us are not in the habit of dieting nor exercising. And yet you meet some people, right? Who kind of seem like they always eat healthy. It's just like their way of life. And they're all skinny and fit and stuff. And this makes you sick, doesn't it? But that's the thing. It's like they chose to live in a certain way that provided them with better health. We all could make the choice. It's just food tastes good. And we could all choose to live a life where we actively shared the gospel more often, but usually we choose not to because it's scary and because I'm so busy. I wanted to get Enrique on here because, So here's the thing. For you people who are in the lower valley, right? People who are in my neck of the woods, if you guys, had someone, would you tag along with them? Literally, it's just hey, you're a Christian. You should share the gospel. If one or two Christians were going to go do that, would you be willing to follow them and not say anything? You're just like person number 3 back here. Like, I'm just going to sit back here and watch. Would you be willing to do that? Like, this isn't actually a self-reflective rhetorical question. I'm actually a literal question. Like, you can even type it and say, yeah, maybe I would follow someone. Well, that's one of our goals in our church, is to start getting people to go out and start sharing their faith, and so that other people who have no experience with that can start following them and just watching. And who knows, by the power of the Holy Spirit, maybe you would open your voice. Melissa, you need to move to the opposite corner of the country. Thank you for joining us, though, too. I do always love seeing you hop on and join us. We'll send a team to Florida. I think you're Florida, right? Pretty sure. Steve will get someone up to Spokane. Actually, I do want to send a group to Spokane one of these days. There's a church up there. One of my old pastors is up in Spokane, and I got to teach there not too long ago. And I've wanted to actually send like a group of people up there to do some missionary stuff in Spokane and help his church out. Calvary Hillside, you should check it out. Anyway, for the rest of you, from Panfilio, way up in Toppenish area, down to all of us in the Sunnyside, Grandview, Prosser, and Mabton area, like, would you guys tag along? If we had teams go out of people who've already done this before, would you join them and just kind of watch and see? Hopefully we'll get our sign ministry going again too, where we just stand out there and hold up signs. Remember that, Tina? How exhilarating that was? It's fun to share your faith. It really is. And it's something that's so scary at first for people, and yet once you do it, it's like, wow, that was really cool. It's a lot like cliff jumping, right? Jumping off of a cliff into the water. It's scary the first time, but it's like, well, once you've been doing it all afternoon, you don't think twice. But quite often, that first jump, if it's from a big cliff, it's like, it's a little bit unnerving. And then after a while, you just get rolling, and it's like, wow, this wasn't as bad as I thought it was. The problem is you just got to get that first jump in. You have to get that first step of obedience to get you moving in the right direction. And so, again, takeaways from this chapter, aside from the Hebrew root stuff we started with, is Jesus has given you the power you need. He says, I've given it to you. You freely received it, so you should freely give it. Secondly, he's just saying, you don't need anything else to go do this. You have everything you need. You don't need an extra coat. You don't need extra sandals. You don't need extra money. You have everything you need right now to go and successfully share the gospel. And you need to realize that some people are going to receive it and some people are going to reject it. And just know that going into it and not worry about it. And you have to remember, how many of you have a loved one who isn't saved? How many doors or how many whatever, right, people is it okay to reject the gospel if eventually they got to your loved one and your loved one responded? And it might not be your loved one you're ministering to, but it's someone's loved one. Someone cares. And if it took 100 doors of rejection to find the one person who comes to know the Lord, well, the angels in heaven rejoice, it says, right, over one lost sinner who comes to repentance. And so not worrying about multiple rejections, knowing that 500 rejections are worth it if we go out firstly in obedience and secondly that one person receives it. So there you guys go. Enrique will be taking people out soon. And so pray about it. Do you have time? Probably. You could make time. Are you scared? Yeah. But the Bible has a lot to say about that too. All right. God bless you guys. I will see you guys tomorrow. Ooh, persecutions are coming. That sounds like a fun section for tomorrow. All right. I'll catch you guys later. Bye.